Hello and welcome to the Yorkshire Bike Mechanics YouTube channel. My name's Dave K. I hope you're having a good week. It's Wednesday today, a little bit warmer today, really strange. I'm having a bit of a tidy up because I've made such a mess. My son who works with us, he's out on his bike at minute. He says, well, I'm one of the most messiest workers he's ever known. So anyway, he's out on his bike, so it gives me a chance to clean up. My next video that I said I was going to do, we were going to take the motor out. We're going to take the Shimano E8000 motor out of a Lapierre e-bike. So I just need to put this stuff away, and then we're just about ready to crack on. So here she is. This is a Lapierre 627i. I think it's a 2019 model. And it's poorly. It's got a really noisy Shimano E8000 motor in there. Okay, it's not noisy when it's switched off, as you can hear. But if I were to turn it on, this bike's filthy. Why would you bring someone in a mucky bike? Anyway, let's turn it on. And we'll just wait for that to boot up. I'll just put it into turbo so you can hear it. And I'll listen to it now. Did you hear that? So... And when this motor gets a little bit warmer, that sound gets worse. Now, E8000 Shimano motors are generally really quiet motor, and so that's unusual, and we know for sure that there's something wrong there. We've run it through diagnostics. It's not showing any fault at all. So obviously this is a mechanical movement, a faulty mechanical movement inside the motor. Something's not quite right in there. So the procedure would be, and this is what we've followed, is I've rung Shimano up, explained what the problem is. They've said that they want the motor back to have a look at. Now this particular bike, it's 2019, it's just over 2.5 years old, and so the motor's not in warranty anymore. But we're quite lucky because Shimano are pretty flexible with stuff. So they're willing to have a look at it, see what sort of cost is involved with putting it right, or possibly replacing it. Okay, so we need to take this motor out, we need to box it up, and let's get it back to Shimano. So this is what this video is about. I'm going to take this motor out and I'm going to show you how it's done. It is a fairly simple process. These motors are fairly easy to take out. The connectors and the wiring is always down the left hand side of the motor to the front at the top. That's where all the cables actually go into this motor. So the first thing that we need to do is let's take the crank arms off, and then we can take this cover off here. So I'll move the camera further in. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to take these crank arms off. The Shimano Holotech cranks, fairly easy to take off. Fairly common across most mountain bikes. These are just fastened to an e-bike motor, that's all, a Shimano motor. So it's the same procedure. Undo these clamps, undo these pinch bolts on the end just to release the torquing plug at the end. So we can undo that. Okay, and then this little key here on the end, this little hook on the end of here, just allows us to pull that little black tab up there, and now we can slide these arms off, he says. Just make sure these are loose, and they are. Okay, let's give it a little man pull. There we go. Okay, so that's one crank arm off. I'll take the other side off and then we'll come back. So I've taken both crank arms off, and I've turned the bike round in the stand and lifted it back up. because we need to take this chainring off. Okay, so what happens is when we send anything back to Shimano, when we send this motor back, they like it as a bare motor. Okay, we can't send it back with all these chain rings and covers on. They like them as a bare motor. They're a lovely motor to work on, to be honest, because everything's fairly simple. So to take this particular chainring off, we need a special tool. It's particularly designed for this particular lock ring on the end of the chainring, but it's a standard Shimano bottom bracket tool, and it's a left-hand thread. So to loosen, we go right. Okay, and once it's loosened, we can use his fingers to actually undo that. Okay, now we'll just loosen that for now, because we're going to need to check it. We're going to need to take off, when I can speak. We're going to need to take off the chain guide. So let's get us spanner in here. There's Allen key. Okay, and we can just lift that off out of the way, and that will enable us to take that bolt out of there, put it to one side, take that to bits, put that to one side, and now we can lift the chain off the chain ring and just let that dangle down there to the back, and then we can continue to take this chain ring off. Okay, once it's completely undone, that lock ring will fall off in my hand. So and then we can just gently pull that chain ring off, and that'll expose the drive there as well. Put that to one side. Okay, so this is an E8000 motor, and it's designed to be fit into lots of different manufacturers' bikes. So the manufacturer will design their bike around this motor, so which means that the way this motor comes out of the bike is different for each particular manufacturers. You might find that some bikes have a different bottom protection case than others. You might find that it'll be more enclosed than others. But on this particular Lapierre, it's fairly easy to get to, so it's fairly easy. It's a simple process to take out. Let's get this chain guide bracket off of there. We need a 3mm Allen key. Okay, so I've taken the back wheel out because it's easier to get to these two bolts that hold this pan underneath this protection cover. It's only a bit of plastic, so I've undone though. There's 2 3mm at front and 2 3mm at back, so I've taken that off, and that's enables to take that cover off there, which is fairly simple. It's just a plastic cover. So I'll put that to one side. Okay, so what we need to do now is we need to turn the bike round to be able to get to the cover at the other side, which is where all the nice gubbins are. All the bits and bobs and all the brains and everything else is at the other side. So I'll come back in a second. I'll turn it round. So I've turned the bike round, and that's let us get to this particular cover here, which contains all the good gubbins. And obviously what I've done is I've just to let you know, I've actually taken the battery out as well from the other side, which disconnects the power from the bike completely. So this is just a Phillips or a PH2. These bolts, these little screws are really tiny. The machine screws, they're so tiny, and they're easy to strip as well. So you just need to be careful that you don't lose them when you take them out. Okay, you just need to be really careful. There's 3 on this particular motor here. Okay, and once these are loose, then I'll very carefully pull that away from the motor, being careful not to lose the screws, and that enables us access to all these lovely gubbins here. Okay, so just to explain what these are, this one here, if it's in focus, okay, this one here is the main power from the battery to the actual motor through there, okay, and it goes into that particular point there in that connector there. These here, there's just two in this particular case. Excuse me. One is one of them is for the controller or the head unit on the bike. These two particular connectors here are a plus and minus for lights, okay, you can attach lights to them particular connectors there, and this particular other connector on the back, which has a plug in it, it's just basically, this plug is just to keep muck out. All that's for basically so you can actually connect a Di2 derailleur to it as well, so you can have electronic shifting, okay. So there's just three ports there, and one a plus and a minus for positive voltage, DC voltage to a light, okay. This particular connector here comes off, there's like a little sleeve around the outside. Sometimes this gets actually blathered in muck, so all we need to do is very carefully pull it up, and it will hopefully release it. It can be a little bit stiff because generally speaking that never ever comes off, only obviously when we service it. So don't take this, if this is stiff to come off, don't start getting pliers and tools out. It's not designed to withstand that sort of pressure from a tool. It's for your fingers to take off only. So just gradually just wiggle it about this connector here, and eventually you will find that it will actually lift up, and then it'll click, and then the connector will come off from the top. There you go, just like that. Okay, and you can see this is a completely weatherproof seal, so you can see there's no muck or dust in there, and you can see the same on the other side of the connector, the female side. There's no muck or dust can get in there because it's completely away from the elements. Okay, so it's important that we don't get muck or dust in this particular port. So I would suggest now, right at this particular point, just getting a little bit of tape or a little bit of a sticky plaster or something just to put in there, just to stop the muck falling in. You don't want muck in there. So I'll just get a little bit of tape. And we'll just put a bit of tape over that, just to stop any muck getting in there. Okay, and that'll do just while we work on this unit to take it out. Okay. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to disconnect these wires here. Now Shimano supply a specific tool that actually slots in here. And they're easier to take these plugs out. What you've not got to do is pull these plugs with the wires, okay? If you've not got the tool, they're easy to come off, but you need to pull them off by the sleeve, okay? And they'll just unclick and click out like that. Okay? And we'll just put them to one side. And again, if we've got a little bit of tape, just to put over there to stop any muck getting in there as well, just where we'll take this motor out. So now we've got these cables disconnected and out of the way, we've covered the ports up with some adhesive tape just to keep any muck that might be flying around out of those, because that's important. The only thing that's holding this motor in the frame now is 6 bolts. There's one here, one at the other side, one there, one at the other side, and then there's one at the bottom here, which I think you can see, and then there's another one at the other side in the same position. So we've got 6 bolts, and that's the only thing that's holding this in. So if you've not done this before and you're fairly inexperienced with doing something like this, you're best turning the bike upside down at this point. Reason being is that if you're not, these things are reasonably heavy, and if you've not got a good hold of it, then it's going to fall on the ground. And you're going to damage it. Whereas if the bike's upside down, you can quite easily and freely take these bolts out and the motor's not going to go anywhere. And then you can just lift it out from the top and then it's not going to fall on the floor. Underneath here, I don't know whether you can see that. Let me just try and see that there. Okay, underneath there's the seat post dropper cable. Now that obviously follows this down tube down, goes under the motor, up through the back of the motor, and it comes over the top, which is there, and then up the tube. Okay, so this is not going to be in his way. We can just move it to one side and just drop the motor out, and we can leave that where it is. So that's the only thing that's holding this in, them bolts. So as a consumer or a user, you might be kind of thinking, why would I want to do this? Why would I want to take my motor out of my bike? Well, there might be a couple of different reasons. You might just be one of those people that like to know what's going on in your bike. You like to understand how it works, and for that reason you might want to take it out, clean it and put it back. But as a consumer, you wouldn't normally want to do this. There's no reason for you to do it. It might be that it's faulty and it needs to go back to your Shimano dealer. If you're working with your bike shop, then they might do it a little bit cheaper for you if it's not under warranty like this one. If you want to take it out for them and then you can take it back, if they're all right with that, then you might be able to save a little bit of money like that, particularly if it's not under warranty. Then there's that reason as well. So yeah, I mean, there's nothing to stop you doing this. You just need to be a little bit careful. They're expensive to replace if you damage it, so that's to bear in mind. So let's crack on and get the rest of the motor out. So all these bolts are out now. The only one that's left in is this at the top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold my hand underneath the motor. Like I said before, if you're inexperienced, it's worth turning your bike upside down, so there's no way this motor actually can fall out. So we'll just undo that bolt, and I've taken the weight with my hand. These things are quite normally stuck in or wedged in. I'll just wiggle that down. You usually find that these Shimano motors in this particular frame like to drop out from the front to the back, so we just wiggle the front out and just carefully lower it down, moving that cable out the way. Okay, very carefully, and there we have it. Okay, so I'll just move the camera out of the way. So you can see now we've got this bad boy out, this E8000 motor. You can actually see it's not actually that big, but there's a little bit of weight to it. Okay, so it may be that you want to take this out and you want to give it a clean and put it back if you feel confident. There's really no other reason apart from that you'd want to take it out, apart from if it needs to go back. So that's basically it. One Shimano motor out of a Lapierre 627i. And that's really how it needs to go back to Shimano, just like that. A little bit cleaner, obviously. We'll give it a clean. If you do happen to get some muck inside these ports, then just give it a blowout with an airline, as long as it's not loads and loads of mud. If it's a little bit of dust, then that's not too bad. As long as you make sure you get it out. So yeah, and as you can see straight through that, straight through the other side, just like the Holotech crank. So that's it. So that were a short video which hopefully give you a little bit of an insight into how motors come out of bikes, what they look like when they're out, and how they're connected up, okay, and what the procedures to get them out. It's a fairly simple process. There's a few things that you need to be really careful of. Obviously cables and wires, you don't want to stretch those. You don't want to drop the motor by accident, because that'll cost you a fortune to get a new one or get it repaired. Shimano motors, there's not a lot of dealers around there that will actually strip and overhaul a Shimano motor. Bosch and Bros and Yamaha, yes, not a problem. but Shimano, not a lot of people do it. Generally speaking, they have to go back to Shimano. So with that, please subscribe if you've not done already. We love you watching our videos. It's great to do them. I know you enjoy watching them. So on that note, toodle pip.